police officer now.
Yeah, really, we got someone that actually looks like a police officer.
I'm calling the meeting to order. Can we please stand to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A lot. Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Sure. Good evening. Councilmember Acuna,
Here.
Councilmember Borelli,
I hear.
Mayor Wilkins,
Here.
Vice Mayor Clarici, and Councilmember Thomas.
Here.
Magical.
Announcements and presentations to the public. I think we have something from Councilman Acuna.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to take a moment to recognize all of our hardworking public works employees and well as our public safety employees that spent a very tiring last 3 or 4 days out in El Dorado and the muck. And from what I can see and hear, they did a wonderful job. So to Steve and to the chief and all the folks that pitched in and held everything together, thank you very much. Mother Nature always tries to win and usually does, and I understand she's going to challenge us again. So thank you all. I know what it's like to give up your weekend and your family time. That is not an easy thing to do, and overtime pay does not make up for the time you lose. So I appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you. Closed session report.
None.
No closed session tonight.
Adoption of agenda.
Move for the adoption.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have no ceremonial matters. Public comment. This portion of the meeting is reserved to persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. State law prohibits the council from acting on items not listed on the agenda except by special action of the city council under specified circumstances. The mayor reserves the right to limit the speaker's time to 3 minutes. The mayor will recognize you, and when you come to the microphone, please state your name for the record. You are not allowed to make personal attacks on individuals or make comments which are slanderous or which may invade an individual's personal privacy. Please give any written material presented at the meeting to the city clerk for public record. Do we have any written communication?
None tonight.
Okay, so I'm going to open the oral communication portion.
Kirk Smith of Placerville. About a year ago, I wrote that political corruption's been part of this town from the very beginning. And then a few months ago, at a public meeting, a member of the public, who's also the spouse of one of the local politicians, took umbrage at that. So I thought I'd point out for you that that information's from the public record and an account of historians, and it's also supported by what's on our city's website, where it notes that Placerville became the county seat in an election where it was selected over Coloma, in an election in which there were more votes cast here in Placerville than actually lived here. The word corruption comes from the Latin corrupte, meaning to break. It doesn't necessarily mean break the law. And locally, it usually means using public property and services for private benefit. So there were a number of grand jury reports. To give you an example, there was the one about the Logan building, where the family had acquired a building that was, according to a number of grand jury reports, stuck with a large bill. So a friend of theirs on the board of supervisors suggested to his colleagues that they buy the property to be used for an office building. Of course, once they bought it, they realized they couldn't use it for the intended purpose, didn't exercise due diligence because the apparent purpose wasn't the public interest. So within a year, they sold it. And the public has literally lost millions on that one. And then, of course, there was the animal shelter a number of years ago, where friends had property they wanted to develop according to 2 grand jury reports. And so a supervisor proposed that the county buy that property used for a, an animal shelter. But again, no due diligence, because of that 10 acres, 7 of them were underwater for most of the year. So it could never be used for an animal shelter. So the public lost $6 million over 6 years, and it's now on the hook for $1.5 million to go to that landlocked property that they'll never be able to lose, but will help the person's, the friends. And that's the same person, by the way, that same supervisor who was the apparent source for this bogus claim that the Judicial Council was considering moving it to Rancho Cordova, the same person who at this point said on March 24th, along with a number of other people, that if you don't approve this now, if this doesn't go forward, this courthouse, we're going to go to the very bottom, all 58 counties. We'll be at the very bottom. We'll no longer have hot priority. But the Judicial Council in letters has said that's not true. Congratulations, you're at the top of the list. It doesn't matter what happens. So even if your constituents got their wish that they could comment, it wouldn't make any difference. You'd still be at the top of the list. It wouldn't matter what plan they came up with, that's going to be the case. So I see the time's up, but I'll be glad to answer some more questions for you some other time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Michael Drobish. Just wanted to discuss this speaker card. State law, namely the Brown Act, requires that if there is a speaker card provided, clearly state that you are not required to provide your name or your address. So just CYA, this needs to be rewritten. That's all.
Yeah.
You want me to address?
Please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, there was, that was put out last week, and there was some information put out that was, we've corrected. It is completely voluntary. There is no requirement that you fill out a speaker card at all. You're welcome to speak at any of our meetings, and that's, the reason for that is simply perhaps to help the clerk in getting correct information when she wants to record it, if you want that information in the record. So, but there is no requirement at all to fill out those speaker cards. They're all completely voluntary. So, and I believe it says that on the speaker card that is there. It says all of that is voluntary. It's totally up to you if you want to fill one out. So,
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close public comment. We have the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion by roll call vote unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. The reading of the full text of all resolutions will be waived unless a council member requests otherwise.
Madam Mayor, I would like to pull item 8.4, please.
Okay,
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to pull 8.7.
I'm sorry. I'd like to pull 8.7, please.
point 7. Okay. We'll pull 8.4 and 8.7. Do we have a motion?
I'll move the consent calendar with 8.4 and 8.7 pulled.
I'll second that.
Okay, I'm going to open public comment on the consent calendar. Okay, I'll close the public comment and bring it back. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Thomas,
Oh, aye?
Vice Mayor Clarici,
Aye.
Mayor Wilkins,
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli,
Aye.
Councilmember Acuna.
Aye.
Thank you.
Switching directions, keeping us on our toes here tonight, yeah.
Keep us awake.
Okay, so we have item 8.4, adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Placerville authorizing the Director of Community Services to coordinate citywide effort to clean up the city's parks and other city property on April 30th, 2016 throughout Placerville, and authorizing the Director of Community Services to spend no more than $22,000 on services, materials, and supplies associated with the event, and approving a $22,000 budget appropriation from the general fund contingency for unforeseen expenditures for the project.
So, Madam Mayor, I pulled this item because this is just too fabulous to be buried in the consent calendar. And I would just like to recognize and thank the Church of Latter-day Saints for being willing to choose Placerville as their service project. And obviously, like Mr. Yulin, I know we have a representative that's coordinating the whole project that might like to fill us in, but there'll be over 400 volunteers, and our city is their focus. And I'm just entirely, I know we all are entirely grateful to the church for their efforts. And so, Steve, do you want to fill us in on how folks can get involved? I know I want to volunteer, and just tell us a little more about it.
I don't know if I've ever thanked a council member for pulling one of my staff reports. So this is a first for me. It's great. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're really excited. Amy Sellers is in the audience tonight, and she's a great person to work with. She's kind of the linchpin between the city and the church, and the city's just poised to take advantage of an offer from the church to clean up city parks and facilities and other grounds throughout the city. City staff, along with the church, is going to have a day of service, it's called, to be held on Saturday, April 30th, 2016. The event will begin at 8 at Lions Park, and the volunteers will be treated to a free breakfast by the Placerville Lions Club. And the first 400 volunteers will be given a free event t-shirt for their efforts. Volunteers will show up at Lions Park, and then they'll be broken up into teams, and they'll have a team leader, and then they'll be sent out to prearranged job sites throughout the city. Tasks will include, but are not limited to, painting, weeding, landscaping, and some light carpentry. The event will end at 1 p.m. at Lions Park with a free lunch provided by the church. The volunteers must be 12 years of age, and we're going to ask that they all sign a liability release at that time. And within your staff report, there's a laundry list of projects that we're going to try to take on that day. And we've worked together in the past, and it's been successful, and I really am confident that we can pull it off. Hopefully the weather cooperates with us. But you can see there's quite a laundry list of things that we want to get done. And so with that, we are also on some of the major projects you see on that list. We're working with local licensed contractors ahead of time to get all of those sites prepared and get them ready to go prior to that event. So we got that covered. As far as the cost, the total cost to conduct the event is estimated to be about $33,600. To date, we've collected about $1,600 towards the event. Approximately $10,000 of the cost can be absorbed by our operating budgets for parks and facilities, and so that's how we think we can pull it off. So we're really looking forward to it. The overall impact to the city is estimated at a conservative $22,000, and that's strictly for materials. So we're going to get a good bang for our buck, and we're really looking forward to the event.
Well, that's
I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
If I could make a quick comment, I'll note Amy Sellers is here. This is also the church that I go to, just for you know, so I've been working with her on that. But the reason I want to mention that is simply that we don't see this as a church service day. It's a service day for all of Placerville.
Community.
We want to welcome the community at large to come out and help on that day. Steve didn't mention, but I believe we're working on, and we're going to have set up where you can register online for it. So it'll be the first 400, if you want a t-shirt, those first 400 that register online will get t-shirts. And we don't know how big it could be, but we hope to see it do well and expand into the future too. So
That was going to be my question, is how do you go about volunteering? What if, like, for folks that don't have not computer savvy, can they just show up, or how are they going to work that?
We're going to use the computer, at least it's my understanding, to note those first 400 that sign up because that's all the t-shirts we're going to have, and we're going to have them sign up with a size if they're one of the first 400.
Can they
but
phone?
yes.
Is there a phone number? Can they call?
Yes, we'll have other ways so that people can do that. I'm assuming we can do that through Steve.
Yes, we're going to use the community service number, 642-5232. And also flyers are going out in the water bill this month.
Oh,
so.
good. Oh, that's perfect.
Fantastic.
Looking forward to my bill now.
Well, thank you, Steve, for
For the first
coordinating
time.
that too. And Amy, I want to invite you to stand up. And just, do you have anything more you'd like to add? I mean, I just.
No, I'm just really excited that it's all coming together, and I'm excited that we do have the Eventbrite platform so people can register and we can advertise that way, and people can get all the details on that site. And then I'm always, the city, community services is going to take calls, and I have my contact information there to hopefully respond quickly to anybody's questions. So.
And when will registration be open for this?
If it gets approved tonight, then it's going to open tomorrow. Okay. Any other questions?
I have
that you
one question. Who's making the pancakes? Because earlier...
I heard they might be
that-
breakfast burritos, because I was worried that it would slow down us getting to work, and they said, we might be able to do
Yes.
breakfast burritos, and that way you can just grab your T-shirt, grab your burrito, and go listen to the safety instructions.
And get to work.
Very
I
good.
like that, yeah, get to work, doggone it, yeah.
Anything else?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
so
much.
And thank you, Cleve, too. Yeah, that's really exciting.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, I'm going to open public comment on 8.4.
He comes to volunteer. Thank you.
There's my application right there. So I just want to thank you for pulling this item because this needs to be celebrated, advertised.
Yep.
You know, it's, instead of a community barn raising, it's about a couple dozen smaller projects all across the city. So, yep, just spread the word, advertise, celebrate, and, you know, we'll see what we can do.
You'll be
So,
there.
Absolutely. I'm looking at this list
We
and
appreciate it, Michael.
I can easily tackle half of these.
All right.
Oh, we have that on record. Awesome.
Could you please submit that to the clerk?
So anyway, I believe that the application forms can be, paper forms can be gotten through Mr. Yule, so,
Excellent.
but thank you and
Thank you.
good luck to everyone here
Thanks,
on this.
We look
you
forward
there.
to seeing you at breakfast. We'll get you 2 burritos.
Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back.
With that, I'd like to move approval of item 8.4.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Oops.
Councilmember Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Mayor Wilkins?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Absolutely.
We want to see that noted as the clerk. Absolutely.
Okay, 8.7, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Placerville approving a construction contract with McGuire and Hester in the amount of $2,684,669.20, approving an addendum number 7 to the agreement with Quincy Engineering in an amount of $40,500 for engineering, design, and construction support services, approving a credit transfer agreement with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and approving a total project budget in the amount of $4,716,700, consistent with the Highway Bridge Program federal authorization for the Blair's Lane Bridge Replacement Project.
Good evening, Mayor Wilkins and members of the council. This has been a project that's been a long time coming, and just to give a little background, the existing Blair's Lane Bridge currently serves as a single-lane, single-span bridge over Hangtown Creek, and it serves Escaton Village of Placerville, residents on Baco Drive, Caltrans Maintenance Yard, and a PG&E substation. The bridge was deemed functionally obsolete by Caltrans Department of Structure Maintenance and Investigations in March of 2002. And in August of 2004, the city successfully applied for federal funding through the Highway Bridge Program and received funding for the replacement of the bridge. This project includes the replacement of the single-lane bridge with a 2-lane bridge, including a sidewalk connection on the west side of the bridge to an existing sidewalk that was installed by the Escaton Village in 2006. The project also includes the relocation of the city's existing sewer main from Hangtown Creek to Broadway and connection of the city's 2 water systems, the Sierra system and the Main water system. Under the HBP program, participating construction costs are 100% funded. Any non-participating construction costs are funded by Silverado Homes as part of the conditions of approval for the Escaton development located at the south end of Blair's Lane. On June 23rd of 2015, City Council authorized staff to release construction contract documents for public bidding. The final contract documents were prepared and released for bidding on December 21st of 2015. On December 30th of 2015, Amendment 6 was issued to Quincy Engineering for revising their contract expiration date from December 31st, 2015 to December 31st of this year. In response to the city's request to revise the contract documents and specifications to allow for a temporary construction detour, and also requesting Quincy Engineering to provide additional engineering support services during construction. On February 11, 2016, the city opened bids and received 1 bid for the Blair's Lane Bridge Replacement Project, despite the fact that we had quite the fevered interest at the pre-bid. The amount that was proposed was $2,684,669.50. The staff performed an analysis of the bid proposal and found one irregularity in bid item number 71, which covered architectural treatment. We did contact the McGuire and Hester for clarification of their total bid price and requested confirmation of item 71's unit price. And they returned, provided written confirmation on February 16th of 2016 that it was indeed a clerical error that had happened. Essentially, the unit price that was listed on the item above that, on bid item 70, was accidentally copied in their feverish attempt to fill in the blanks before turning in their bid. Since they were the sole bidder, it was the only irregularity, and it was also confirmed that it was a mistake, and therefore you can, because there is one bid under public contract code, if it's not an advantage to another bidder, you can let it go. Once staff corrected the unit price, the total bid came to $2,684,669.20 for a difference of 30 whole cents. Staff proceeded with checking references from McGuire and Hester and found them to be in good standing with current licenses and therefore deemed to be the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. On May 12, 2015, just to cover a little bit of the environmental review, we did receive our permit from the Army Corps of Engineers, and an addendum to the adopted mitigated negative declaration was also made on January 26, 2016 to address temporary detour route that would be utilized during construction. And the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA document, was also revalidated by Caltrans on January 28, 2016. Thus, we are ready to go to construction. As such, staff is recommending the following resolution: approving a construction contract with McGuire and Hester for the Blair's Lane Bridge Replacement Project, CIP 40604, in the amount of $2,684,669.20, and authorizing the city manager to execute said contract. And approving amendment number 7 to the consultant services agreement with Quincy Engineering in the amount of $40,500 for additional engineering design and construction support services, and authorizing the city manager to execute the same. And approving the Sacramento District, California in lieu fee credit transfer program, contract 00007 with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation in the amount of $17,800 for project environmental mitigation, and authorizing the city manager to execute the same. There was, I believe, when Mayor Wilkins was reading the original agenda item, there was an item pertaining to additional appropriations for the funding. I don't know if that's the correct of this one, because we have to actually bring the total amount current. So as part of the HBP program, the amount of money that was actually appropriated needs to be brought to current, which should be the $4 million amount as read. There we go. Approving the total project budget in the amount of $4,716,700 to be consistent with the Highway Bridge Program federal authorization for the Blair's Lane Bridge Replacement Project. Sorry for the long-winded explanation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you. The reason I asked for this to be pulled is because I'm just kind of reflect back on the last neighborhood chat that we had about another bridge. But I thought this was so appropriate because of what it's taken to get through this. And I think you kind of went through the numbers really quickly, but I just want to reiterate how this was all approved, and the money that was given, well, I'm going to say given to us, I mean, you know, and how we, because a lot of folks I noticed at that meeting said, you know, why are we spending this money on a bridge project when we've got all this other need around town? But so I thought this was a great example in front of us right now. It's ready to go. But the numbers that you read, how we got that money, why we got it, and that it cannot go for any other project. And it's kind of the same thing we're dealing with, I think, in, you know, it's oranges and apples, but it's a bridge. A bridge is a bridge. And, you know, the way, so anyway, that's what I was getting at when I just thought it was very appropriate to let people know that, you know, how this all came about. And it's amazing the number of, you know, funding and how we went about getting it and acquiring it and everything. So.
Yes, ma'am. The Highway Bridge Program, it is a federal funded program doing environmental documentation and preliminary engineering, essentially the final design. It's covered 88.53% of the total dollar value, and 11.47% local match is required under the Highway Bridge Program. We were fortunate enough to have that local match available through the Eschaton of Placerville Development, and therefore did not cost the city actual dollars. It was part of their conditions of approval for the development. In actuality, we've maybe used 30% of their total required allocation match. So we've also been very responsible with their funds as well. Right. Furthermore, because it is a highway bridge program, federal funding, the important thing to recognize, as you so accurately pointed out, it's not like we can take this money and go move it someplace else on a different project within the city. This is project-specific money. They identified a specific need for a specific location, and therefore that money gets specifically used for that. The right-of-way and construction under HBP is 100% funded. So that's, $2,600,000 that the city of Placerville does not have to pay for, and we benefit with a nice new bridge and a nice new roadway conform and some utility improvements as needed. And in the case of having the available developer match, we are able to better our infrastructure on some of those infrastructure improvements as well, including the water system and the sewer system that we're upgrading as part of the project.
Right, right.
But yes.
Well, thank you very much, and that's the reason I pulled it and had you go through all this again, but I just thought it was really important to use that as a highlight to what we're kind of proposing, the next thing that's on the list. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
With that, I will.
Oh, I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I believe Vice Mayor Clarici has a question.
Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, thank you, sir. Rebecca, thank you for your analysis on the project this evening. Couple quick questions. Well, are we tying the water lines together? It went through my neighborhood, that one they went up and over the hill. So we're going to actually be able to put that system together now?
Yes,
Now, that
much
is
to the
awesome.
excitement of our Public Works Department,
And if
too.
we ever had a fire, how exciting to have water. Because I understood that there were some real deficiencies.
There were, and
there
this
still
will
may
improve
be.
efficiencies within the system. There are going to be also regulated flushing stations, as well as a pressure reducing or regulating valve. So some needed improvements and upgrades to the betterment of the water system, which will now be one combined main water system. We currently have the Sierra system, which serves a small population of Placerville, and then the main water system, which serves the bulk. And this project will actually tie the two together, which makes not only just the actual physical system more efficient, it actually makes monitoring and regulating and doing Title 22 compliance more efficient as well.
Excellent, excellent. Also, McGuire and Hester, that is an old firm that I'm familiar with that did a lot of projects in the East Bay area. Are they still primarily headquartered there? Or?
No, they are throughout California.
Okay.
They have set up shop in Nevada as well. We've contacted multiple agencies, multiple construction management firms, and they were highly reputable. So we're very excited to work with them.
It was, like I say, an old name. I thought, oh, yeah, I know those guys. So, awesome. Well, thank you again for your hard work.
Glad to.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I have a question and an observation. The question is, how old is the Blair Bridge?
I don't have the exact number offhand, so I dare not quote it, but it is old. And actually, the bridge inspection report is available for review, and that has the actual date memorialized. And I personally don't recall at this very moment, so I'm not going to misstate it.
Okay, I don't need that. I think it's important to note, because one of the questions that came up in our chat was why that particular, the Clay Street Bridge, why we were doing it. It was like, and there was some thought out there that we had just sort of, the collective city councils past, staff of the past had just sort of decided one day that we would replace a bridge, for there was no particularly good reason for it. We just decided to do it. And nothing could be further from the truth. And actually, if you look at the three bridges that we actually have funding for, the Blair Street Bridge, Clay Street, and Placerville Drive, there is a process you go through. There are assessments that are made. At some point, there is some kind of practical, sort of pragmatic assessment that's done and says this bridge it's either unsafe, which is the absolute critical worst, but a lot of bridges, in fact most bridges, I think, get replaced because they become functionally inadequate. They do no longer serve the purpose that they were originally built to take care of. And so this Blair Street Bridge, which is obviously, my guess, I asked a question about its age, there's a little snarky there, but there's also a legitimate point. this is a really old bridge in town. It's been around for a long time. It's named after a very old family. You know, my guess is that it's been there for maybe, you know, maybe not as long as the Clay Street Bridge, but certainly a long time, and we're going to replace it. We're going to change a fundamental thing in town here, and yet you don't see a lot of people sitting out here yelling at us about it. Why? Because, well, it's not quite as sexy, and it isn't as important. The Clay Street Bridge serves a higher function, but, you know, but we went through this, what I'm trying to get at is the same process that pointed us at the Clay Street Bridge to replace it is the same process that was used to say the Blair Street Bridge needs to be replaced. It's not a whim, it's not fancy, we're not doing it just to wake up in the morning and do something. And I think this is something that needs to be really focused on. There's not an emotional component, it's a pragmatic, good governance component to this thing, which I think is important. So that's my observation about this process, and I think it sort of dovetails with
Well,
what
that's what I was
are
trying
bringing up. Yeah.
to bring it up, and
Yeah.
because I thought this was a good example.
This
And
is-
also, the very fact that Eschaton Village went up there is what led to this
Yeah.
whole thing, and
Yeah.
so it increased
So
the
there are
traffic.
some similarities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Anyway, I'm done.
Okay.
Any other comments? Okay, I'm going to open public comment.
Sue Rodman, Placerville resident, member of the Measure H committee that voted to fund the sewer upgrade for this project. So part of the work going in here was funded by Measure H as well. And I think of all the crappy bridges I have seen in my life, this one certainly falls in that category. It is totally inadequate. This is a good one we needed to replace. When we first came up several years ago saying that we thought we needed to do this, I drove up to see the new Eschaton Village that was really pretty brand new right then. And I thought, ooh, this is not a nice bridge. And then I came down the hill and I thought, oh, this is a disaster waiting to happen. So I'm glad that we're gonna do this before we kill somebody.
Thank you, Sue.
Good evening. I agree with shutting the bridge completely down, speed the project up, just get it done. I do think you need to inform the residents of the detour if they haven't already, because
Why?
once those trucks start rolling in front of their homes, they might be mad.
Imagine the shock.
Anyway, I wish the detour had been put into the
Surprise.
agenda item. I had to go to City Hall to get this, so just to let the neighbors know. It's really the only way, that detour, because
Oh, yeah,
the way the land is.
It's such a little bridge.
The railing is going to mimic, as far as I know, the 3 crossings, local crossings here at 50, which is fine. That bridge is kind of off the beaten path, out of the way. But for the Clay Street rail, whatever, I wish that we can come up with a community consensus that better fits the downtown. Because to Mr. Clarici's point, why Clay Street and why not Blair's? I think it's all location, location, location. Clay Street right here, heart of downtown, historic district. Blair's, famous family. But it is the location. And Blair's, for emergency reasons, for Eschaton, health and safety, they need to be able to get out and survive. So that's it. Just let the neighbors know about the detour. Thanks.
Mayor?
Thank you, Michael.
If I could comment, and Michael's absolutely right, the need to keep our folks safe up at Eschaton is critical, but we have 2 very critical components that use that Blair Street Bridge, and how they've put up with it all these years, I don't know, because I was involved in some of the utility work. And watching the Caltrans truck drivers and the guys that deliver the big equipment on huge flatbeds negotiate not only the bridge, but the turn down into their yard several times a day or an hour even. And then the PG&E substation, it's been reconfigured for a number of years, and it counts on the Blair Street Bridge for its access. Yeah, they have their old building over there that they would literally have to cut a hole through the fence if they wanted to get into the substation. So again, a critical community facility that relies on the Blair Street Bridge. So the Eschaton folks are in good company. It's an important component.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Okay, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back.
I would like to
Yes. Make a motion?
make a motion that, how about if I don't read the whole thing, just 8.7, and move for 8.7.
I'll second that.
Okay, but roll call, please.
Councilmember Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Mayor Wilkins?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
May I just add one little clarification? We actually did work with the Eschaton HOA. It was their recommendation and support to do the detour. So we actually attended the HOA meetings. They're very excited.
Oh, I'll bet.
But having it on the map is a good idea.
Yes.
Okay, we have no ordinances, no public hearings, which brings us to discussion action items. 12.1. Adopt a resolution by the City Council of the City of Placerville approving an agreement with Probowski Research to perform polling on a potential sales tax ballot measure for the November 2016 ballot and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you know, in September of this year, or last year, in February of this year, we held a community meeting to discuss ways to fund our deferred maintenance in an amount of approximately $45 million that we've estimated for streets, water, and sewer. And at those meetings, we discussed several options, and it seemed to be the conclusion that a sales tax measure was probably the preferred method to try and fund a portion of that deferred maintenance. Staff presented several options to us. We looked at, can we just do this through commercial growth, through annexations, et cetera, possibly? Could we do it through a utility user tax, a partial tax, and a sales tax? And we provided comparisons for each of those. We also looked at, the major questions of if we went to a sales tax measure, how would we do it? And that, as you recall, 2 years ago in 2014, we attempted this and failed by 9 votes to tie, 10 votes for it to pass. So we just came up a little bit short. That was for a general tax. And just quickly, the explanation: a general tax requires a majority vote, or 51%, as opposed to a specific tax that requires a 2/3 vote, or 67%. So those are the different thresholds that would need to be accomplished if we decided to go forward with this in which measure. There's also the question of whether or not we put a sunset on it. You can also look possibly at whether or not, what level of sales tax we would look at. You can do anywhere from 1/8 cent up to a penny, I suppose. And so those are some questions that are still out there. As you recall, in 2014, Council contracted with Probowski Research to complete a survey, phone survey, in order to determine what the measure of acceptance might be for a sales tax measure. And so that was done, and I did not include that report from 2014 in your agenda. However, at the request of one of our council members, I sent that out to you, I believe, yesterday or today? Yesterday, thank you. So that is still available, and that information is available for you to review and look at and compare. I had the opportunity to meet with Adam Probowski, who is here in the audience with us tonight and available to answer questions regarding this. You see attached to your report is a proposal which he prepared for us, which lists a range of costs depending on the number of survey questions, and that's the primary cost factor in it. And so those costs ranged from $15,800 for 25 questions up to $31,250 for, I think it was 50 questions, 50 questions, thanks. The proposal is attached here for you to review also. I believe if we decide to go forward with this, that we can probably do it closer to the 25 question level. The proposal or the survey that we did 2 years ago was actually 27 questions, so it went a couple over. So I think in my discussions with Mr. Probolski, that 25 number is a little bit flexible between the 26 and 27 or whatever it might turn out to be. So we can work with that. So at this time, the purpose of this item is to start this process moving forward, to determine whether or not we want to do a survey. That is, a question is there. I provided those options to you. We could approve this proposal with Mr. Probolski, who has done the research in here and is now somewhat familiar with the city. We could go out and get other proposals. I have not done that at this point, but I could from other firms. There are several out there. And then the third is simply to decline to do a survey at this time and move forward in some other manner without the survey. And that is definitely an option also that the council can consider. So with that, I think I've given enough explanation on that. As far as where we go with the sales tax, that decision doesn't really need to be made tonight, other than if you think you want to move forward with the sales tax, then and you want to do a survey, then you should move forward with that at this time. The formal decision as to what level of sales tax and the possible sunset on it, whether it's a specific or a general tax, all of those questions can be answered at a later date, whether or not you decide to do the survey. But if you do think you want to do a survey, I would recommend that we move fairly quickly with it now and move forward with it in order to meet all the timelines that we're going to begin to run up against. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, council, for questions. And again, I want to emphasize Mr. Probolski is here to answer questions and provide information regarding this if you would like.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Well, wouldn't the survey determine what we're gonna, I mean, if we did a survey, wouldn't that determine?
That is one of the purposes of the survey.
Correct.
Is determine the acceptance level for things like a sunset. Does that improve your chances of approval? Or the level, a quarter cent or a half cent or an eighth of a cent, all of those levels, specific and general, all of those things can be surveyed to determine whether or not the public will accept them. And some of those things, you'll note, were also surveyed in 2014 to look at that information. That information is a couple of years old now. So,
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
thank you. I'd like to thank Cleve for sending out the information from the 2014 survey. I wasn't here then and didn't realize exactly what questions had been asked and to what detail and the cost that was associated with that. And I appreciate that information. I found it very interesting. It is literally almost to the day 2 years old now. In my past experience with various issues at the city, we've used information that's 10 and 15 and 20 years old to make some of our decisions. So I see this in our world as relatively fresh. Looking at I was able to print out in about 8 pages the top questions that would probably be very similar to what would be asked today. The other thing that I would like to thank staff for in preparing this is it gives us an idea in his contacting the polling company as to what we would be getting for a range of expenditures based on the number of questions we would have to ask. So I think that's very important for us to know. Do we want to do a survey? Well, what's it going to cost? Well, now we have a range, $9,000 to $31,000. That to me is a significant amount of money to perhaps not obtain the information that we're looking for. So I just wanted to thank Cleve for the 2014 information and also for taking the time to get us the answer so that we can accurately discuss this evening the values of a new survey. So, thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yes, thank you. Those comments are kind of in line with what I was thinking. When I looked at the staff report and then I looked at the information that was done 2 years ago, my first question to myself was, what will we find out from that survey that we don't already know? It is 2 years. 2 years is not a short amount of time, but my guess is that the electorate hasn't changed significantly in town in 2 years. My guess is that their attitudes about taxes probably haven't changed significantly. It was nice to see, I adopted this as a pat on my back, even though I actually wasn't on the city council when the survey was done, that there was actually the city council and city kind of governance has actually seen in a positive light, which was nice to see. The kinds of issues that were out there that people saw as being important and that they were having problems with seem to be the same things that people tell us today. And so, and we can all sit around and have our favorite adult beverage and talk about why the other thing lost by 9 votes. And that would be very interesting. I have my own feelings about that. I'm not so sure that starting off a process that you're telling people you don't have enough money to fix something and then spend some money on something is the best way to go about it. Especially if we didn't have any information to go with and we hadn't just had an election, I would say that this would be money well spent. I am a big fan of getting as much data and information as possible. But since we have information that for this city is brand new, for the most part, from a sort of big picture view. And, you know, it's not like we don't spend a lot of time with the citizens of Placerville every day, kind of hearing what they have to say. That's my question, and I guess maybe the question I would ask the rest of the city council is, what will this buy us that we don't already know? And would it change, if we do decide to go after something, would it change our strategy? Because that would be data that you'd want to know. Is there something in the data that would help you with strategy? I don't know if that would be the case, but those would be the questions I would want to have answered.
Good question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the discussion and agree with everything you've said. The questions I would have, and I look forward to Mr. Poblowski, addressing some of these things, is my feeling is we have so much at stake. I mean, we are at a point with our infrastructure, we are at a point of no return. It is a do or die moment. We cannot afford to have a revenue measure fail. Because if it does, you're gonna take a look at our streets, because that's what you're gonna get, and it's gonna go from bad to worse quickly. So this has to work, and it has to work for our community, because they need to decide, but they need to have the information so they can make an informed, accurate decision. And my feeling is initially in looking at this, it says, gosh, it's only 2 years old. Why do we need to do this again? My question for Mr. Poblowski later will be, how will this effort differ from what we did last time? How can we build on the effort of last time to get more information? And for me, looking at it, the last ballot measure got kind of convoluted. We were talking about, City Hall, and we were talking about the police station, and we were talking about infrastructure. And we were kind of pulling the temperature of where people were at. It's a new day. We are just talking water sewer, period, because there's such a critical need. So my feeling is that a polling effort that focuses on that.
Water, sewer, roads.
Yes, sorry, water, sewer, roads. I'm sorry, of course roads, water, sewer, roads, yes, thank you.
Staff can breathe again.
Right. That an effort that focuses on that will give us perhaps accurate information. Also, I, for one, will be seriously looking for specific versus general. It would break my heart if we decide to go specific and it fails by a narrow margin, but a general tax would have passed, especially with just the infrastructure. Also, if we go forward on this, in addition to perhaps what percentage of taxation our community is willing to take a look at with a sunset clause, I would like to also gauge the temperature on the Citizen Oversight Committee, because I think that is an absolutely critical component of any measure, of the success of any measure. And I'd like to see how we could pull who that is. Perhaps it's a Measure H committee. They have a proven track record. This council has never, ever deviated from their recommendations. And rather than getting a whole new committee that people say, well, I don't trust them, council's gonna go, renegade on them, we haven't done that. And the Measure H has been a tremendous success for this city, and we've made tremendous progress because of their diligent efforts. So that's something else that I would like to get answers to. So those are just my musings for right now.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning the Oversight Committee, and thank you for really driving home the point that it is water, sewer, roads.
Yes.
Unlike last time,
Right.
definitely convoluted. One of the questions I'm going to have is, and I see that I had the same questions. We have this information. 2 years is not that old. We've had these chats, and we're hearing the same thing. So, is there a need? But one question about the new survey would be, is the wording more to educate? So it's not just to gather information, but to express need, I guess, would be to push the cause, I guess, and create awareness. That could be of value. So anyway, do you want to have him come up first? Or
I just want to say a couple things too. I agree with Wendy that we had, did you say convoluted? But we also had other measures on we had a lot of things going that we were trying to, say, and I think that might have interfered somewhat. And I think that we didn't have a lot of the facts that we've got now. When we put that on, if you remember, we had the young lady came and did quite a presentation, and it was like a month or 3 weeks before this went to vote. And had we had those statistics, which we've got now, I think it would have really, helped. And now, my goodness, it's certainly out there for people to see that we're just in terrific need of this. So, just my comments.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, thanks for having me this evening. I think I'll try to go through some of the things I heard. Please remind me if I've missed something. First, to address some of the things, I think some of the differences you'll have on this time around, if you do pursue some sort of a revenue measure on the ballot, and the survey, what we can accomplish, we're going to be able to test some of those items you mentioned, a sunset, and test a oversight committee, and identify whether those will, I think, make a difference in people's, in the voters' appetite for a revenue measure. And I think we'll know whether people care about them and whether that'll make a difference in their support. Additionally, I think I just heard about it here at the end of the conversation, this idea that there aren't competing things on the ballot. I think that will certainly make a difference. We won't necessarily see that in the survey, but in November, I think there'll be a difference in potentially the outcome. That's just, I think, a fact of life. You're not going to have something else in the city on the ballot. There will be a lot of other things on the ballot in November, but not something necessarily competing within the city for the voters' attention. I will caution the conversation about something being fresh, I guess, over the course of the last 2 years. I totally understand this idea of, let's say, an engineering report or something being relied upon over the course of 2 years or 4 years or even 10 years. I guess I'll bring in some politics. Who among us 2 years ago would have thought that Donald Trump would be relevant in politics? So I think 2 years is probably a long time to look at political or polling numbers and think that they're fresh. So I really think when it comes to research on a political level, and that's quite frankly what these numbers are, polling really is really not relevant after about 6 months. we tend to look at polling numbers every about 6 months. And from state purposes, we typically go out every about 6 months in any given jurisdiction that we go out and poll in. We poll all throughout the state for local government, and whether it's for water districts or school districts or for cities. And the value of doing research for local government on revenue measures is to advise policymakers and to advise staff on making these choices and really give the voters essentially what they're looking for. If you look back to the research we did a couple of years ago, there's some really great numbers here, and it's not like you're trying to subject the voters to something they're not looking for. 82%, if we want to rely on the numbers from 2 years ago, suggests that they want more funding for the things you're talking about doing right now. Back then, we talked about it in terms of local streets, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, and storm drains. I think we're looking at some nuances to that, but essentially the same things. So we're now looking at it in terms of how do we nuance the details of this revenue measure, if you decide to pursue it, to make sure we can conform to something that they will feel comfortable with. And that is, how do we make sure it's within the confines of something they're comfortable with, whether it's 1/8 to a penny, probably something somewhere in the middle. How do we do it in terms of a time frame they're comfortable with? Is there a sunset to it? Is it 5 years, 7 years, 10 years? How do we do it in terms of what kind of oversight methodology? Is it, is there a website where they can see everything on a regular basis? Is there a oversight committee that they can go talk to or come listen to on some regularity? How is it that they can really understand it? And those are the details that we're going to be able to poll within the confines of 25 or 50 questions or somewhere in between, and be able to get them to a place where they're comfortable with it. Or am I going to come back and say it's not going to fly? And that's really what you get within the confines of the research. And as policymakers, you can feel comfortable, if you decide to go ahead with the research, that you're doing it as most other cities in the state do. I mean, well, let's say hundreds of other cities do research before they go out with revenue measures. And it's, as one of your council members one of your colleagues just said, it's smart to use data. It's data-driven decisions before you go out and put something on the ballot. And you're talking about raising millions of dollars, so expending several thousand to raise millions is a smart way of going about doing business. It's why we exist in business. So I hope I think I addressed all the different points. And just one thing I will point out, the research side of what we do is not in any way meant to inform, meant to educate. I'll point that out. In the process, we do certainly people who we talk to on the phone, I think, might feel like they perhaps might have learned something after we talk to them for 25 minutes or so, and certainly they may be better off for it. But our goal is not to educate. Our goal really is to research, and we never want to be in a position of advocating, certainly through our calls, because we want to get pure research through that process, and really, certainly because I think the city attorney would probably be very cautious in that process, because we're never in the position of advocating. You're certainly never in the position of advocating. We keep that hard line of just purely doing research in that process.
Okay, I guess what I meant by I don't think I said advocate.
No,
I
no,
meant educate.
educate.
Is more creating awareness. If you get a call, oh, our sewers and roads are bad.
Right.
Maybe, I don't know who doesn't know that, but
Right.
it could bring it fresh in their mind.
Somebody that doesn't live here.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, if I could ask Adam a question. Adam, I wasn't here in 2014 or 2013, whenever it was that they hired your firm. And for the benefit of those in the audience, and also for all of our folks that watch us on television, could you describe what it is that you're going to do? I noticed in the last proposal, it looks like you contacted 200 households, and I would assume that would be 200 completed.
Correct.
So there was undoubtedly folks that just wouldn't complete, that said no, so you kept going.
Correct.
Until you went through 27 questions with 200 of our households. And this gives you some magical mathematical formula that then tells us that the other 4,000 voters are in sync with those 200. Because that's where I don't
yeah, so
necessarily. Because you explain what it is you're going to do for us, please.
Absolutely, and fantastically, it's not magic. It's actually math. It's a great mathematical calculation that just simply says that it's a statistically valid mathematical calculation that says basically you can stratify the 200 completed surveys and make sure that we're matching the demographics of the city. So we're making sure we're contacting the right number of men and women, the right number of Republican and Democratic and independent households. In California, we call them declined estates, right? Making sure we're fulfilling the right number of 18 to 35-year-olds and 36 to 45-year-olds and older and senior citizens and all those different categories to making sure, and geographically throughout the city, to make sure that we are matching the demographics of the city voter-wise, and therefore we now know that we are matching the demographics of the city, and we now know that we have completed that stratification, and therefore we know that those 200 represent the entire voting population of the city, and that moment in time. Now we're polling here in March. Here's another, quite frankly, difference in what hopefully will happen this time versus last time. The last time, I don't believe there was a very robust information and outreach effort that really kind of talked to the voters about kind of if this passed, what would happen, and if it didn't pass, what would happen. I think this time, I think that might be different. I think the city may engage in a little more outreach and information, and I think perhaps outside of City Hall there might be more of an active effort as well. So I think that might be much more of a reason why there may be success in having it pass, and I think that may be a big difference as well. But most importantly, though, the survey research will be, it's a moment in time, right? So here we are in March. It's a moment in time. If we poll the day before the election, we can certainly give you a much clearer picture of what's going to happen. So that's a big difference in I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen on the day before the election, but I can give you a very clear picture of what's going to happen today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the explanation.
Yeah.
I have a question for staff. How much does it cost to get something on the ballot when it's combined with the?
We are estimating, I think Kelly, you just got that, it's gonna be, we're putting $7,000 in our budget for it. Last time, I think it was somewhere around $4 in 2014 when we did it. Is that right, Kelly? Around 4,000. So, but they've told us the costs have gone up a little bit since then. So, I'm saying maybe between $5,000 to $7,000, and that's for the total election, not just for this item.
Oh, okay.
It's based on how many items are actually on the ballot and how much our cost gets.
So
spread
it's not
to
too
those.
much more to add this.
No, I don't think it would be just for this one measure. I don't know how much. Again, it depends on what other items are on the ballot to see what the total cost is, but it's not a major difference in cost.
Okay, I'm asking because I'm just thinking about the $30,000, and it's almost like is it worth gambling $5,000 that our old information is too old and that it's not going to be significantly different? Because when I think about the Sunset and the Oversight Committee, just observing the meetings and just talking to the community, to my observation is that those things would matter. So I guess it looks like we'd be just focusing on specific versus general as the main part, and maybe whether it's a quarter cent or half cent, but
And
as far as this,
sorry.
go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt. There are other nuances, and I think if the city manager mentioned that he sent out the report, and I don't know if you guys took a look at it, but there are other nuances to the messages that you guys use, that you would use in the outreach campaign that you might discuss, and how you might talk to the voters, and how, so for instance, when you communicate to the voters and what's happening with the infrastructure within the city, there are ways you communicate to them about what's happening, right? Sometimes you just show them a picture of a broken pipe, and that is an effective way of telling them that there's a problem. Sometimes you talk to them about, a sidewalk that's unaligned, and sometimes you talk to them about, an example like the Flint, Michigan, let's say, right? Different communities or different demographics respond differently to different messages. The survey research kind of gives you that tool of understanding who cares about what. And so when the city manager, who perhaps might go talk to a homeowners group, on any given day with a slide presentation, and I know he's put together a pretty impressive one, may on any given day go talk to some seniors and tailor his message that day with one particular message that they might be responsive to, because the research kind of has a message that they care about, because we know that seniors care about that particular message. The next day he may be talking to another group, and the research suggests that that group cares about that message, and he can tailor his message to that. You may get the I don't know if you have a captain or who's your chief. You may engage him to go out there and talk a little bit about a subject, and the fact is you have all kinds of research that drives the message, and there's really great data that'll help you communicate what it is the voters care about, and it's a very helpful tool in that process. And what's kind of nice is you have months and months between now and the election to use that data in all those different parts of the community. I know it's not a very big place, the city, but you have a lot of different pockets of community members who care about different parts of all these different stories, about the roads, about the different parts of the infrastructure, and you can really tailor that message.
Thank you. Question?
One more question for you. Does the scope of your services also help us craft the ballot language
Absolutely.
based on research?
Yeah, so it's a very significant part of what we do. We work closely with the city attorney to the extent that he'll allow us to. And we're also here as much as you want us to in town. I'm here today, and I'll be back. Well, actually, I think I got the email from Cleve yesterday.
And you came from San Francisco. I mean, you live in Southern California, but that's no small task.
It's true. I live in Irvine, but I think I got the email yesterday.
Wow.
I'm here today, and I'll be here in as often as you want me to be between now and November, whether it's 2 times, 4 times, or 8 times. It doesn't really matter to me. My goal is to help you if you decide to move forward with the research, to help you fulfill having the research complete. If you decide to move forward to put a revenue measure on the ballot, to have you successfully put it on the ballot, and then to successfully move forward on some sort of education campaign if that's something you decide to move forward with, and to then successfully have this move forward towards the voters. We're a part of that process as much as you want us to be a part of that process.
Thank you.
Did you do that last time?
We certainly offered that last time.
No, and maybe we didn't accept, and that's why I'm curious.
Yeah, I think that, as I kind of explained, I don't think there was very much of a outreach education effort on the part of the city.
I think we just had so much going on that anyway, Okay, so obviously you didn't do it, but that would be part of the, and I think that's an
We're,
interesting
we're,
fact.
we're here, we're available, and you call us, we're in town, and we're engaged.
Thank you.
It's very explicit in the, in the offer.
Thank you.
Yeah, and would there be additional costs for those services?
And it's also very explicit in the proposal. There's no additional cost for us to be here and.
Ballot language, helping with the education.
There's no additional cost. And I know that the city manager asks for, up to the $30,000, and I think that's kind of normal course of business, but I have no reason to believe we would need 50 questions, so, I don't think it's necessary, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I'm going to open public comment.
Sue Rodman, again, resident of Placerville, member of the Measure H committee. Measure H passed with over, I think it was 72% for a specific tax, and I can tell you why. Because when we sent out a questionnaire, it was specific, it was limited, it was focused. We did the on-the-ground walking neighborhoods and talking to people and putting up signs. And so we pushed it and we supported it as a grassroots organization. And that's what got it through. And it wasn't, I think I also participated in this last phone survey. I was one of the people who was called in whatever demographic group I fit into. And I found the surveyor had a language problem. It was very difficult to understand her. Her questions were convoluted. They were long. It was too much stuff, and not a concentrated, focused survey that said, do you support this? Do you not support this? What about doing these other things? And a lot of people that I talk to around town, because they know me, okay, you're on the Measure H committee, what else is going on? And they asked, did you ever get that survey? Yeah, did you? Yeah. And what did you think? And so they told me what they thought. And they thought similar things to what I thought, that it was too long, there were too many questions, and they were not to the point. They wanted to know, what's it really all about? Don't ask me if I like my city. Ask me what I think of what you're proposing to do, and make it clear what the choices really are. And I think if we decide to go for a survey, we need to make it a lot more focused. 50 questions is horrible. 27 questions was a trial of my patience to get through. If you go over 20 questions, I mean, the game is 20 questions.
I remember that show.
So let's keep it down to a reasonable amount and keep it focused and talk about what we really need to do. That we got a $45 million problem here, and it's streets, roads, and sewer and water. And ask people if they're willing to pay a half-cent sales tax. If you're not willing to pay that, are you willing to pay a quarter? And explain that way everybody pays who comes to Placerville. And that's about what you need to do, instead of these very long, convoluted questions. Do you sort of support? Do you maybe support? Do you object? 5 shades of answers? Nah, get it down to 3. Is it yes, no, or maybe? And focus it in. If you're going to do a survey, it's got to be a focused survey for something like this. Because we have a specific problem to answer. We need to put specific questions as to how to do it. And I see I'm out of time.
Thank you, Sue.
Good evening, Mary Donkey. Before I start, I want to commend, I was unable to attend your meeting out there for the realignment of Clay Street. That was such a creative idea. an on-site eyeball. Thank you. As far as a survey, it seems to me, having attended town halls and just little small coffee clutches, we've been doing our survey on this issue. And I think we do have a response that concurs with the last survey that the people of Placerville want this tax, and they don't want the tax, but they want their infrastructure fixed and they're willing to pay a tax. So I don't see a need to spend the money on the survey. I would get right into strategy, and the strategy's right here in this room and outside this room of others in the community. Tricia, you mentioned, would the survey help educate? Hello, we can educate the public. Sue talked about grassroots walking around the community. I also know that redevelopment was defeated by grassroots walking around the community. I know that the roundabout was at Clay Street was defeated by grassroots walking around the community. It's a matter of informing the public. So how do you do that? It's already started. The Mountain Democrat has run editorials. Wendy wrote it very nice, laid it out clearly in a letter to the editor. We can continue with that. Other council members can add their voices. Community members can be solicited to have you write it and let them put their name on it. Some people are afraid to put their name in publish. Neighborhood meetings, and I don't mean town hall here. I mean, go to these different geographic districts that Mr., I don't want to mess up your name too badly, Probalski mentioned. We know what those geographic areas are, okay? Let's go there. And one contact person, would you be willing to have some people in your home or in your yard? Everybody bring your lawn chairs. Come on, we can do this. And what could we do with $30,000 in this process? I think it's huge. I think it's huge, along with our spirit of volunteerism, which is also huge in Placerville. We know that. Wendy, as far as language on the ballot, what are we afraid of? Okay? Let's just be clear. And have legal counsel run it by the city council. Say, does this make sense? Are there loopholes? Is it unclear? Measure H committee could also perhaps very well put the language together. We can do this. Some of my questions were already answered by Mr. Probalski. I wanted to know what the percentage was of yes, 82%. Number of respondents, 200. I just wanted to know what percent of the registered voters in Placerville that 200 was, and if that was a really an adequate sampling. I'm not sure.
Mary,
Yes,
can you make your final thought, please?
yes. So I would just continue what we've been doing, but ramp it up. And don't forget, when the council gave concessions to the Boys and Girls Club, there was a final comment that said, and we hope we'll have your help in our next election for taxes. So I think those will be our major campaigners.
Thank you.
We're going to sign you up.
Good evening, council again. I too also called elections to get some numbers. So the cost to the city for elections November 2012, $3,318. November 2014, $4,258. So it is kind of a moving target. Depends on how many ballot items there are. But so you can kind of guess. I think your $5,000 to $7,000 number is going to work. So when the city council wants a ballot measure, there's no filing fees. You pass a resolution, you take your language, you'd send it over to elections, it's done. They take it from there. there's no cost. You'll have to pay them for the cost of holding the elections. So basically, about $1,000 ballpark to put a measure on the ballot, because you're going to have some council members running. You might have another item, but ballpark. So you can spend $30,000 to ask people what they think, or you can risk $1,000 and just put it on the ballot. And you could do that every election for 30 times. So for the price of the survey. So you can use online surveys, but I know that the importance of getting technically correct surveys. So the sample was 200 people. If you do have to go with a survey, I would think you'd want to put it out to bid. Bring in some other people to pit them against each other and offer the best service, best package for the lowest price. I understand it was easy to call the previous consultant because it was in the Rolodex. But so if you do feel the need to spend money on a survey, just put it out to bid. So that's all. So, some numbers for you guys.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Jackie No. I'm here to oppose the spending on the polling sales tax measure. I opposed it 2 years ago. It didn't help us pass then. I'm opposing it now because I think we can do a better job. You know, we know what the problem is. We know we're losing 25% of the water. We know we've got pipes bursting. We know we have a crisis, basically, right? We know what the problem is. We know what the solution. We've held many meetings to find out what the solution is. I think what we lack is a real plan that people can get behind, right? I'm not interested in finding out if people will tolerate an eighth, a quarter, a half. I want to know what we need. What do we need to fix the problem? You know, can your engineers give us a list of the top 20 worst projects? And can you tell me what 0.5% for 10 years will help us accomplish? You know, I think what we're lacking is that plan. And instead of spending money polling people, let's spend money on an education campaign. Let's get out there. I mean, we can take results from the last survey we did. We found out that I think 65% of the people learn about their information from the Mountain Democrat. You know, we have the water bills. Let's get the information out there. Let's get it bullet pointed. You know, here's the problem. Here's the solution. Here's what happens if we don't do anything, because that's one thing nobody's talking about. What happens if we do nothing? We don't just sit and watch the roads deteriorate. You're going to come to a public health issue, right? And you're going to have to jack up our rates to pay for those busting sewer and water lines. That's the reality of the matter. Either that or we're going to sit here and we're going to wait for the federal government to bail us out. That's a terrible solution. We don't want that. We want to keep our money here locally and not deal with that. So I think we need to come up with a solid plan to propose to the people. I think we need to launch an education campaign. And, you know, my husband gets up here and says it every time. If we don't plan for success, then we plan for failure. So let's make a plan and like my fellow citizens, let's educate. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Jackie. I want to point out, it's right on the front page of the staff report. It spells out exactly what we need and some of the options, what a utility tax would take for each resident, what a parcel tax would take, what a sales tax would take, and how much commercial growth we would need. So we have the information. We have it. Anything else?
There's a couple observations that come to mind. One, I do think that Sue Rodman's points regarding the length of the questionnaire is appropriate. Some of the questions seem like they were like push-pull polling, where they were designed to elicit a particular kind of answer. But there was some discussion 2 years ago when this came up about sending out a questionnaire, as you've sometimes done, with the water bill. The drawback is it's not scientific. The plus points are it doesn't cost you much, and it conveys the image that you listen to people and you're interested in the results. Sue pointed out that Measure H, the tax increase there, passed by a 72% vote count. That's nice. And I think that if you had the tax for a shorter period of time, not 10 years. It's hard to sell people on the idea that's a short term.
30 years.
Pardon?
Measure H sunset is 30 years.
Oh, I was referring to,
Kurt, can you please address us?
I was referring to the, not Measure H passed by 72%. Do I have that right? Okay, so the difference is that your sales tax last time was for 10 years. And that's not in the business world thought of as a short period of time. And it was not marketed as being for a specific purpose. If it was, I think you would have gotten your 2/3 vote. Also, you could consider asking people about other tax options like what other communities do, like 5 cents for plastic bags. We use a large amount of plastic bags, and you'll find out on April 30th when you go out and try to clean up the town. So there's other ways to raise money, and asking people those kind of questions would be appropriate to do, no matter how you do it. But those are the kind of options to look at. Oh, do I actually have a minute left?
Go for it.
Amazing.
And count it.
I'm used to building by the hour. Sorry. Takes adjustment period. No, and I really had some doubts about the last poll, because when it said that most people get their news from the Mountain Democrat, if that were true, their advertising rates would go way up, their circulation would go. I don't know of any poll in the country that supports that kind of notion. The Washington Post almost went bankrupt until a billionaire, got it. It's a tough business out there. That raised some doubts. So the question is, if you do, should be shorter, and you should have enough questions that give people options, like a price for 5 cents for plastic bags. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else out there? I think, has everyone spoken?
I think they're up.
Maybe the commander?
He's the only one.
Okay, I'm going to close public comment. Bring it back to council.
He has to drive on the streets.
I have a couple of observations.
Yes.
Okay. I think it's interesting about informing the public about what's going on. One thing that El Nino has done for us, besides bring us plenty of water, or some more water, not plenty, but some more water, is it has turned our roads into Swiss cheese. And so, I mean, I don't want to be funny about it, because, I mean, if there is a question that gets asked when I'm downtown or anywhere in the city, it's always, in fact, it was funny today, somebody said, "Are you going to fix the pothole?" And then he gave me some corner, and I go, like it was the only one in town. And I go, well, you're gonna have to be more specific, because there's a bunch of them out there. I think the public understands the gravity of the situation that the town is in. I think they know that we have a problem. I think that what happened with Measure I is that we got some very good information from our polling person, and then we abandoned it. We just let it sit there, and we were distracted by other things that were going on in town. And we didn't focus on the one thing that would have actually brought a benefit to most of the citizens in the community. I have a feeling that if we were to go out and talk to the citizens like adults and have a good conversation with them, I won't predict the future. I will not say whether this will pass or not, but I think it would have a much, much better chance of passing. We could get all the data in the world, but if we take the same course of action that we did 2 years ago, we will end up in exactly the same place, because my experience is, as I like to tell people, my default on all initiatives is no. I vote no, and then I have to be convinced that it's a good idea. And if there's nobody out there to convince you that it's a good idea, you will vote no. And I think that that's where if you were in favor of the tax passing, that's where you failed. If you were against the tax, then you got a success, and you were happy about that. But I don't think that the time frame was an issue. I think that it was simply going and talking to people and letting them talk to you. And I don't like to use the word educate, because that makes it sound like people are stupid, and they're not stupid. They just need to be engaged in a dialogue about what's going on and the options that are available. And I think if we choose to go down that road, we will be in good shape.
Comment?
I just have to say, I am so encouraged by the conversation tonight, and it is really gratifying to see our community coming together on this issue. And it's It's certainly an issue that is critical to all of us, and I look forward to an engaged grassroots effort to pull together as a community and to work this out together. And I think that's really exciting. It's something we haven't seen in a while, and I look forward to this. And I think your ideas, Mary, of neighborhood, in everyone's front yard with your own lawn chair and going to the neighbors and talking about, the streets in that neighborhood and around town and all the different efforts that we can do. It's going to be fun. We have the information. We have already engaged our community in a very vibrant dialogue that we haven't had before. And so, but it will take all of us working together to help engage the rest of our community to do this. And I look forward to that. So.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to all of our speakers this evening on this topic. Council Vice Mayor Clarici, I like your notion. We're informing, we're not educating. And I look over to our legal counsel and make sure that we're allowed to inform, because we have to take that very fine line of educating but not campaigning. I appreciate the opportunity to get up to speed on what happened here in 2014, and I think John's absolutely right. We gathered up all kinds of great information and sadly shelved it and got distracted, and our roads definitely show a significant compounding effect for it. I would be in favor of, and I again appreciate Cleve getting us some ballpark ideas of what this would cost us to do some polling, and I still see value in the information that we have. And I think, as we've all kind of expressed here, we have a pretty good idea of what the pulse is of our electorate right now. We hear it every day, and most of it, fortunately, is friendly, but the frustrations are growing. And Wendy, you said earlier that we need to give the citizens need the correct information. And I'm not sure that spending 10 or 20 or 30,000 on polling right now would be the way to do that. I would suggest that what we do is we work on that education or that information process and make sure that we can show to the voters what they're going to get 5 years down the road, what they're going to get 10 years down the road. I spoke to Cleve late this afternoon about this idea. We have a pavement management plan. Rebecca has her pulse, perhaps over a leak, on the water and sewer system. She knows where the top 5, 10, 20 projects are. With our pavement management plan and the resources that are behind that, they could very easily dovetail into putting a top 20s list together, if you will. Use whatever number you want, but I'll just say the top 20 list. If we were to present that as part of our education information process and have these same funds, but maybe get Rebecca some help, call in a couple of consultants that are in this field that do pavement management, that do project consulting. Matt Boyer's name came to mind to me earlier today. They could help our staff develop a product that would be very visible and very easy to go out and I almost said promote, to display to our citizens what we could potentially do with 5 years or 10 years worth of this half-cent sales tax money. Let them see what streets and roads and leaking pipes would actually start to disappear. What it would be like for our Public Works Department to, year after year, be a bidding engine and being out there doing project after project. And that would then, I hope, give a lot of comfort to folks that they would know where their commitment is going for their sales tax dollars. The other thing I think is automatically has to happen is we have to expand the Measure H committee to maybe a 7-member board, and they need to look over this, and they have to have that public oversight. We have to make sure that we also can do whatever we can, whether it be in a sunset or specific wording, that a future council doesn't come along and say, oh gosh, we've always wanted to buy that piece of property up on the hill. Nobody will mind if we take $750,000 out of the road fund. Stranger things have happened. As Adam said earlier, 2 years ago, who would have thought that Donald Trump would have been competing every night on our televisions? But we have a responsibility to do everything we can this year to make sure that these dollars for now and forever until this thing ends or is approved for extension, that these funds are committed to road, sewer, and water. The other thing we need to let our electorates know is if we fail with this, we're going to have to find other ways for Rebecca to fix those pipes. And those pipes mean she has to do it. We have a safety issue. It's a public health issue. That means the rates are going to have to go up. So we could really, I think there's a possibility to use of funding to empower our staff and maybe bring in a couple of key people to help them and start this education process. And graphics and get it out there everywhere. Get meetings, get it on every street corner.
Okay, I do have something. We're talking about all these things that we all know need to be done, but getting back to this survey, who and when are we going to find out what the people want? Do they want a half a cent? Do they want a quarter cent? Do they want do they want an oversight committee? Do they, I mean, these are all things that, how are we, and we're up against some kind of a timeline. I don't know what it is, but I mean, I as a council member do not have time to go out in the neighborhoods and question people. I don't have time to get on the phone and be a surveyor. Mary, I certainly appreciate and I agree with you. We've got the most wonderful town, actually county, full of volunteers, but I don't know that all this stuff takes time, and I don't know how much time we've got. So maybe somebody can answer my questions.
Well, I don't know how much time we've got. Well, we have till November, whenever, but
no, but you've got to get a ballot.
Well,
I mean, yeah.
But I would suggest that yes, it's. I mean, I think it's kind of an interesting sort of thought. Kind of exercise you can go through to say, well, would the people prefer a quarter cent over a half a cent over 3/4 over something else in 10 years or 5 years or 20 years? The thing is that we have a real problem, though. The real problem is it takes about $2 million+ a year to deal with the roads. And we have a real problem on the sewer side, and it's a number, and it's every year. The only way you can raise the money is to do certain things. If you say, well, would you like a quarter cent sales tax? You might say, well, yeah, that seems less than a half, so I'm not going to pay as much. But the quarter cent only gets you halfway to where you want to go. Now, if you're actually thinking, well, I can use a half a loaf, it's better than none, you might go down that road. But I think we would have much more success with the citizens of this town. In the few times that I've engaged the public on this very issue, and you kind of walk them through, you say, well, no, a half a cent gets you this much money. On average, it's not guaranteed, but if kind of, if past is prelude, we'll get about this much money. Our quarter cent generates this much money, so we have we have a track record with these things. The pavement is deteriorating at this level, it needs this much money, we have to do this thing. It takes about, realistically, you need at least about 10 years of income to sort of really make a dent into this thing. It's amazing how quickly, with just a handful of bits of information, you can get people to come around. I think but if you ask them, well, would you rather not do anything and not have any pain? People would choose that selection. There will be people that will come to the podium, I guarantee you, between now and whenever this happens, that will say, you don't need to raise taxes. There's a special magic way to make all of this go away. And people will want to hear that, because who wants to pay a tax when there's magic and you can fix it some other way? Those things will, like I said, I'm sorry, I'm sounding like a broken record.
It's not answering my question. When are we going to do it?
We'll do it now. I mean, we already have the information. The information's sitting right here.
Yeah.
She has the technical data. It won't take a lot to start to do this. What we have to do is get out of this venue, because this is not the right one to be actually doing this, and to start to talk to folks who are interested in this maybe, and start to say, how will we do this? And how can we do it? I'm committed, because I'm not actually running in this cycle. I am committed to getting out into the neighborhoods and talking to folks. I love to talk. You've probably noticed.
I've never
Not
noticed.
you.
Never
Really?
noticed.
Yeah. And I think that we can go out and have we can go do
They're
this.
shy.
Yeah.
I love walking the neighborhoods.
I love it.
There's
It
no
was the
doubt
best, that was the best part of campaigning.
And doing it as part of the grassroots community effort would be
Guarantee
even
you.
better.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's
idea.
what's required. Water bill. I say, let's use our good
Start
old
use
water
the
bill.
water bill to start to lay it out.
Send out the basic
I know.
questions. It's not perfect. example, but it's also very low cost.
Could somebody answer
Dave,
my
what does
question
it-
about time-wise?
We do it right now.
No, I'm talking about ballot, when all this has to be done.
In order
We have
to
a date.
make the November ballot, I want to say it's going to be in July sometime that we're going to need. I don't have the exact date because they will not give it to us yet.
Yeah,
The
they
county
won't- they
will not
probably
give
haven't
it to
said
us
it.
yet because they're still working on the June ballot.
Okay,
But-
so this is March, so we've got April and May and June, 3 months
Right.
to do some sort of a campaign.
Well, no, that's not to do the campaign. That's to get all of the information to know exactly what you want to put on the ballot in November. So you have to have the ballot language, your arguments, et cetera, for an,
So
you
you
know,
would
and the
have-
opportunity
okay.
against.
So-
Anyway, there's a timeline that those follow through after that.
We'll have to make a decision. I'm assuming we'll have to make a decision on whether to go forward with an initiative relatively quickly in order just to kind of not get behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. For example, if you decided to do a specific measure.
Right.
There is a what do you call it, expenditure plan that you have to put together that I'm assuming would take a little bit of time. The general tax, a little bit more flexible in terms of that. There's not as much work in terms of that you have to put together. But the information you're talking about is probably something akin to an expenditure plan that you've referred to in terms of this informational piece, in terms of what we would do with this amount, X amount of money in the next 10 years, for example, would probably be similar to what you would do in an expenditure plan. But the sooner we get that together, the sooner we can start getting the information out there. So, did that answer your timeline question?
So we know
I hope so.
July, well, we know July 1st, just generally speaking, July 1st would be probably a pretty conservative date.
Yeah.
The technical date, I believe, is 88 days before the election is when that is due to the county.
That sounds familiar.
But they always back that up a little bit more because they want a little bit more time.
So in your observation, do we have time to mount a campaign and get all the answers and
Yes.
do we? Okay.
Yes, I believe we definitely do, but we need to start. That's why I wanted to get this to you tonight. This is kind of step one, deciding what we do with this, and then from there we'll move forward and continue a process. For example, you mentioned the utility bill. I asked Mr. Warren to reserve a spot in the utility bill for between now and the November election. I believe we have a spot in that for informational pieces that we can do. So,
Can we only do it once?
Pardon?
Can we only do it once?
What?
A campaign through the utility bill? I mean,
No, we could do it in every utility bill between now and November.
not a campaign.
But we're not campaigning or promoting, we're providing information
This would
regarding
be
that.
our
well,
survey.
what?
No, it's important. It's very important
It's
to use the right
information, and
language,
do
yeah.
we have, can we put it, information in more than one utility bill?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a technical question for our city attorney. Okay, if, going down the direction of conversation here, if we were to take part in a grassroots educational component here, to go out and take the pulse of our community, how many of us council members could take part in it? What would that look like? How could we participate with our community in that? And could we take expenditures from the contingency for unforeseen expenditures to create informational components? So legally, how does this, what does it look like here?
Well, there's a fine line, as
I know.
we've noticed tonight, between campaigning and providing information. City funds cannot be used to support a campaign. They can be used to provide information regarding matters which are before the electorate. So cold, hard, objective facts can be presented. You have to be careful that it's not slanted or swayed to try and induce or persuade someone to vote in a particular direction. But you can provide that information. So city funds can be used for that. In terms of going to chats or get-togethers, my recommendation would be that no more than 2 council members do that.
Right.
You start to run into potential Brown Act issues if you do more than that. So, did that answer your questions, or did I miss one?
Yes, no, that's good. All right, thank you.
I think I have a question for Wendy. Madam Mayor,
Yes,
if you don't
Councilmember
mind.
Acuna.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I had down Citizens Task Force, just because that sounds kind of cool. But grassroots sounds pretty cool, too. Would we get into any kind of a conflict if we were to encourage the creation of a citizens committee to, John's eyebrows are going up, to help confirm the information that we're seeking, the half versus a quarter, the 5 versus 10 year? It seems like there's maybe 3 or 4 basic questions.
Individually, no. Individually, you would not get into a problem. I'm
Okay.
not sure that the council could come out and and let's put it this way, spend any city funds in setting up that committee. I mean, you can endorse a measure
You could
as a
ask for
council.
volunteers.
You can endorse a measure as a council. You can ask for volunteers, but you can't spend money on it.
Okay. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. I mean, we're searching here for an effective way to do this, to engage the citizens, spending our dollars wisely and doing it, hopefully getting the right information.
Do we have a motion?
To do
You
what?
want to get this thing over with? It isn't really.
Well, it isn't really. It's what is it? It's,
Let's see.
Are we
we
approving?
want to
or-
adopt a resolution, and I
Adopt a
no, I wouldn't be making a motion to do that.
I mean, there is a range of options here as far as, do we use a polling as part of a grassroots campaign? It certainly could be a part of it. Or do we feel that, I mean, we've been working hard on this all year. Do we have the information that we need to launch an effective program?
Could I, Madam Mayor, could I ask Cleve one question? Would you go back to the estimated cost to complete the survey is 15.8 to 31.2, and why you're recommending the highest number?
I'm not recommending the highest. That's just the rent, that's the maximum number, the 31,000.
Okay, I
fully
misunderstood.
anticipate that we would do it much less than that, probably closer to the 15, or there may be an option to even go a little bit lower than 15. Let me put it that way, through some negotiation with Mr. Probolski. I want to emphasize, this is simply my recommendation based on all of this. You have 3 options listed in there
Right.
also, and any of those could be the motion. If you want to make a motion to adopt the resolution, then that pretty much spells it out. But if you want to make a motion for one of the other options, I want to make it clear that those are all options that the council has to select.
So option number 2, is that really an option, or are we under such time constraints?
We could do that. It would mean that we would have to come back probably at your next meeting. I think we could do it in one meeting. They're pretty responsive to those requests.
You know, it's a critical issue to our city. The quality of our life hinges on this thing, as far as I'm concerned. We've heard very clearly from an interesting cross-section of our citizens that the previous survey was too long, and it's too, I think I've went through one of these that long, and it takes a long time. I'm hearing that, I also heard I heard some mild support for a maybe 5 or 10 question survey, very focused, very short. But that may be something that is difficult for polling companies to do just economically. Can't afford to go that way. But I just want to ask the question, do we want to do a very focused? I mean, that isn't where I wanted to go this evening, but I've listened to what's been said here this evening by our citizens, and it's that critical to me that I'll ask it. Do we go for 5 questions? Would we even get anybody interested in doing 5 questions
Well,
for us?
I
Can
think-
we ask if,
Does it give you the right, any
Yeah,
kind
could
of
we-
valuable information?
Yeah, because my only
Right.
question was without context.
Wait a minute, just,
Yes.
Mayor Wilkins, I think what she's going to say is what I was going to ask.
can we bring him back up here and ask if is that done? Is there value in your professional?
So there's always value in research, and I certainly appreciate the comments from your citizens. Let me, if I may, cut me off if you want, provide some perspective. We complete surveys that take 80 minutes long, that are 125 questions, that get into details of full tertiary treatment of sewage. that are very, very complex. And those are boring and uninteresting, and people stay on the phone for an hour and a half, 2 hours with us on those subject matter. So having people talk to us for 20, 25 minutes, or in this case, about 19 minutes or so, and on a subject that's really near and dear to their heart, right? Their city, their community. I get that some people here express some frustration that, was a little bit long. Really, quite frankly, a lot of people are very, maybe not overjoyed, but are quite interested and quite happy to communicate with us and stay on with us. And if they're not able to stay on the phone with us, we're very engaged, especially to get to complete 200 in a small community like this. We call back. If it's dinner time, if they only complete 10, we call back at another time. We're really engaged with them to make sure that we can complete, because we want to get 200 completes. We really, really work with them. The answer to your question is, sure, if somebody says, look, you only have 5 questions, I'll work with you on completing a 5-question survey. The price of the survey isn't going to be $2,000 though, because there's a cost minimum of going out in the field to make those questions. It's also not going to be, it's not going to be, a whole lot. It's going to be a lot less, but not a whole lot less. If the idea is, hey, let's figure out a way to condense this down, sure, we can cut a lot of questions out of this thing. The goal, though, is to give you some of these nuances and figure out if you can't get the exact amount of funding that she needs to fulfill the entire program that she needs, maybe get as close as you can get today as you can, and start on your program. So maybe in 2 years or 4 years or 6 years, you can get the next part of the way. That might be what this survey tells you, that you can start on fixing some of the problems. That might be what the survey tells you. It may also tell you that you can't get any of the funding. But if the survey says you can get an eighth or a quarter cent and not the half a cent, that's possibly what the survey tells you. That's probably the reason why you want to do the survey versus not doing it at all. That, I think, is probably the reason. But yeah, you could certainly say, hey, don't go a question over 15 or a question over 20 or a question over 7, and sure, we can figure that out. I'm happy to work with you, whatever it is. We're here to help.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Can I add a quick comment to that? Depending on what you want to do in terms of numbers, I'm sitting here thinking about the questions that you may want to ask, and I don't have the expertise that Mr. Provolsky does, but because I was a little bit surprised when I looked back and said we did 27 last time, because I think we tried to limit it to and still get the information we needed. But I think you want to be careful about saying maybe 5 to 10 questions. I don't think that there would be any value to.
That was just an example.
I know. In that, I
It's just,
think,
could we cut it down?
I can think of 3 different things you need to ask, but that doesn't mean you can't get that in just 3 questions,
Right.
in my mind. So anyway, just point.
Thank you.
If we didn't have an engaged community on this, I would say that this makes a lot of sense. But we do. We do have an engaged community, and things are different this time. And the information from staff and the engagement of staff is different this time. And I'm very, very appreciative of Mr. Pawlowski and all of his trips up here. I appreciate that. Appreciate working with him. But hearing from the community tonight that they're willing to work with us and do that, and perhaps some funds are better spent in support of those community efforts rather than in this direction. So at this point, I'm going to make a motion that we decline the survey proposal, and at this point.
I will second that motion.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Clarici?
Aye.
Mayor Wilkins?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember Acuna?
Aye.
But now we get to work.
Thank you for all your comments.
Thank you. Council reports from other agency meetings. We have the Transit Authority, Councilmember Borelli.
Yes, we had a meeting, and it was mostly directed to budget, but I would like to say that we gave a kudos to Mr. John Lyons, who's the lead mechanic for the Placerville Union School District, and he's retiring, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think this is a fine example of cooperation. The transit, the school district has cooperated with transit district and vice versa for many, many years. And I think he had a lot to do with it, but I just thought it was a fine example of how groups working together can help each other out, so.
Thank you. And we have the El Dorado County Transportation Commission.
Take that, Vice Mayor.
Wow. Okay, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version.
All right.
Coming from me.
Okay. We have some funds coming from something called the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality thing. And we actually had we have a number of bicycle and pedestrian projects that are queued up to do it. I didn't bring the list with me, I should have. We had some.
One is available.
That's great. They're on here. There's a number of them. It's not important. And then, so there were those projects, and there was several county projects. It was a nice mix of projects, and it all comes to about $5.5 million. Awesome. Well, we have reported previously that the state of California cannot get its act together when it comes to funding the state highway fund and the what? The STIP. Well, the State Transportation Improvement Program. Okay. And so we were first looking at a zero STIP, which meant we could not program any new projects, which would have been fine because we really didn't have anything to put out there. Now they're coming back with a negative STIP, which means you actually have to take projects off the STIP. Well, when you only have one, it's really a challenge. The staff at ETCTC came up with an option where we could take some of our CMAQ, in fact, all of that CMAQ money, and basically exchange it for funds through SACOG, I think it was, and make and guarantee that the next phase of the Western Placerville interchange would get funded. There was a lengthy discussion about all sorts of things. I brought up the idea that I actually like CMAQ projects, not maybe to deference to road projects, but that's what the money's for. That's what we're doing for. We have a number of very good projects which are very important to this community, and so does the county. And I also feel like their state is forcing us to rob Peter to pay Paul rather than them getting their act together and actually funding the STIP. And it takes their feet off the fire. There was a lot of philosophical discussion back and forth. I actually thought we had come up with an idea that made some sense, and that was there were two projects on the list that actually we were asked to make a decision last week, and that basically would push all those, it kind of held all those projects in limbo till June, while we waited for the state of California to probably not do anything, and then we would have to come back and then take all this money from these projects and actually put it over here to make the Western Placerville interchange whole, foregoing any activity on these projects. This year. There are two projects in there, though, that if they were delayed even the 3 months that we were talking about till June, 4 months or whatever, they would not be able to hit their marks and be done this year. One of them is a relatively small project down in El Dorado Hills. The other one is the bike project on the Veterans Bridge, which now curlicues to nowhere when you get off the highway at Placerville Drive. That's a lot of money. That's like $1 million. The other one was like $170,000. So I suggested, why don't we fund the one project and then put the rest of them in abeyance until June and find out what the state's doing. That idea actually then got some traction, but then we all decided to just wait a month. And we kicked the can down the road a month because it was determined that a month would not unduly impact the two projects which might go forward this year. And by then, we might have some other options. We are pounding the state of California for a variety of reasons about this particular project because A, a lot of it is being done because of the courthouse that they want to build, and B, because Ray Lawyer Drive overcrossing was built, in essence, not just to supply the county and go take people over to the new jail, but because they were going to realign Highway 49 and make it go around the backside of that hill and go over to Diamond Springs. Well, the state abandoned the project, and so now we have this really nice overcrossing, but it doesn't really meet it doesn't meet our needs. We would spend all our money on Placerville Drive and that interchange if we could. So we're still pounding the state, and we're going to see if we can't get them to do something. The EDCTC staff is now looking at various other options to maybe help finesse this thing so that we can keep the WPI phase, whatever it is, whole, and proceed with some of these other projects. So that's what we did. I also reported, and I think I reported here that the excise tax has been lowered, but I think I did that the last time we had a meeting, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So LAFCO, I have a conference call next week with Mayor David to actually finally confirm Mark and get him working. Yeah.
It's about time.
Get a sash and a thing.
He wants that, he wants a sash.
Do I get a sash and a scepter?
SACOG.
SACOG.
Thank you.
SACOG. Oh, we had a transportation committee meeting. It was somewhat unremarkable. I will update though on SACOG. I mean, we just went through some little things. Most of them had, it was a real meeting focused on stuff in Sacramento and the 4 counties down there, and not really to us satellite counties. To us satellite counties. So, the one interesting thing about SACOG, and this has to do with our affordable housing discussion, is that Mike McKeever and some of his staff are going to be up here on Thursday to talk about, we're not going to overblow this thing, but we are going to talk about affordable housing and maybe some ways that SACOG could help us with our current dilemma. And that's actually very exciting. That's going to happen at 9. We're also going to talk about a few other things, I imagine, while he's up here. But that's the executive director of SACOG. So to have him, and like I said before, it was his initiative to do this. So I am very pleased to have that happen. And that will help inform other discussions we're going to have with all sorts of other people. Thank you. While we go down this road. Okay.
Is he going to be here long enough that you're going to be able to give a couple of examples about why we're fighting this so much?
Oh yeah,
You're going to take him.
Oh, I don't know if we're going to do a road trip.
That's what I'm asking.
But we'll you know. Well,
I mean, I just
it's a
think
small town. We could. I mean, we could
it's
drive
a very
them around.
small town, and I just think that it's very pertinent to why we're so adamant about what we're trying to
Even one site.
achieve.
Mike is very in tune with
He
us,
is, but
even
I mean,
though-
if you
yes.
could just
But no,
give an
Mike-
example, I just think it
If
would
we
be a
can get
great
him in a
idea.
car and drive him somewhere, we will be happy to do it.
SEDCOR?
SEDCOR is ongoing.
Awesome.
I hope we are going to have, finally, get this thing straightened out, but it's still ongoing, and there's a lot of emails going back and forth and a lot of conference calls, and I went over there to a meeting, but we're still negotiating, so.
And was there a 2x2? No. No. Okay. Request for future agenda items?
Madam Mayor, thank you. I do have 2, and I am very cognizant of, whenever it works in staff's schedule to bring it back, and I'd like to ask the council. I've had a couple of community members ask me for a status report and perhaps an action plan for Upper Broadway, and I know we're in the middle of it. I know we have the police satellite station in the Carriage Trade Center. I know the Upper Broadway Bike Lanes project was looking at roadway improvements up there as part of this. The information I'm looking for is, we have a no camping policy. How is that working? What is the state of, illegal camping? Do we have a lot of camping sites on Upper Broadway? I've heard that we do. And so what is the status of that, and how can we perhaps enforce our no camping policy up there? I am also concerned about the attractive nuisance that is the Stadium Club that is burned down and continues to be there, as well as the exchange, the vacant tire exchange. I know I've heard from several community members that there's broken windows, transients are going in and out of that building, and that it remains an attractive nuisance. So I'd like a status report and kind of an action plan for how we intend to deal with those attractive nuisances per the council's.
Could I just mention one more area? On the transportation, we were denied the funding for Upper Broadway that we talked about.
Right.
Of maybe getting some sort of sidewalks in that area where, remember, Mr., oh gosh, he came and talked about the danger, of going around that corner and almost hitting people and stuff. And what are we going to concentrate on now for funding to try to get that area safer?
So just kind of a comprehensive look
Something, yeah.
at that Upper Broadway.
I just, yeah.
So just kind of a status report
And
on
Wendy,
that. Yes.
and John, we remember the committee that was appointed at Transportation, and Wendy, you and I added,
Yes.
What?
The committee for the
And
active transportation.
the active transportation that they're going, and you brought up Broadway and I brought up Placerville Drive,
right.
that we
And you
need.
suggested Placerville.
And you suggested senior citizens.
yes.
So we need to.
So how does that,
Well,
how does that fit
we
in with
need
this?
to, we need to we need to tell the Placerville Drive people and the Broadway people about this committee, and that
Well,
they.
staff's gonna do that, but that's a different issue.
Our
Yeah.
staff and their transportation is,
Yeah,
but they don't
transportation.
know who to contact.
Okay, well, I'll get a hold of them for that.
So
but
we
yeah.
need to tell them some names.
Okay, I'll get a hold of that, but do I have a council consensus on this? And I also, we'd also talked about, at some point, we bring you back, how is our satellite station working? What's the status of that?
That was my
It's kind
question.
of part of it, yeah.
I've had a lot of people ask me
Yeah.
about the.
So that would be great. And then sometime down the road, I would also like us to look at our noise ordinance. That currently, the noise ordinance in our city code on the website dates back to 1970 and states that that amplified sound can only happen between up until 6 p.m. 7 days a week. And I know that is, the fairgrounds has events late at night, and so people are at different functions and groups are asking, I know our police department and city staff for, allowances for that, and so that creates confusion and extra work for our staff. Also, someone brought to my attention today that our park ordinance dated September 10th, 2013, Title 6, Chapter 10, talks about amplified sound in our parks. And I was reading it, and it's kind of vague because our parks are open till an hour after sunset, and that you can have amplified sound in the parks, but that would lead us to believe that you can have amplified sound up to an hour after sunset, but our city code says 6 o'clock you're done. So perhaps just streamlining that and cleaning up that language as to what makes sense for the various events in town. Because I know, for example, the Hangtown Halloween Ball goes till, was it 9 or 10 on weekends? And
The next day. No.
Well,
and
From
the
what I'm hearing.
gold panning championships have later hours as
Don't
well as,
aren't they under the same auspices of the racing? And I think
the
that's
fairgrounds?
cut off at 10 o'clock.
I don't. So I'd just like us to look at the noise ordinance and see what we need to do to clarify.
Exactly.
So people don't have to keep coming back.
But the
to city
Halloween
staff.
ball went on till like 3 or 4 in the morning,
But they
but
go
they did
inside.
move it
I'm
indoors.
talking outdoors,
Yeah.
amplified
Well,
sound.
what time did your act go on? 2 o'clock? Right?
We
you
started
you got
at
up
2.
at 2:30, I think.
What do you wanna know?
Mayor's dancing.
I have one more thing, if you don't. I will keep it.
Oh, and I'm sorry, one more time. No, further clarification. I would like to thank our city, our police, I would like to thank Commander Nida and our police chief and our police staff, as well as Cleve, for working with the Hangtown Halloween Ball. I know we've been trying to work out some timelines for them, or they're looking at pulling out and going to Grass Valley. And so this is a big issue. I know, Rayleigh's pretty much sells out of a lot of things,
Everything.
and we get a lot of sales tax from that. And so I
Warren. Look at
appreciate
Dave
our
Warren.
police
He's going,
department.
So it's a big rush on Doritos.
I appreciate our police department working with city
Except there's
staff
no
and the
tax on
events.
food.
Nah, that's not true, not all.
I don't think we need to worry about that.
But I think they were buying a lot of
They are
booze.
eating and drinking anything they can get their hands on. I guarantee it. Okay.
Can I do a quick follow-up with staff on Wendy's
Oh, yeah,
issue
this
with
could-
the
yeah.
noise ordinance?
Yeah.
If I could ask Pierre
Pierre.
to As I recall the old noise ordinance from my planning commission days, it can get pretty involved with construction noise and park activities. And would that be your, if you're gonna,
Amplified sound.
you're just looking at amplified sound?
Clarifying the fairgrounds policies
Okay.
especially, and yeah.
I wanted to
Yeah.
get that clarification.
Amplified.
Otherwise, Pierre
Thank you
could
for-
strike off on a whole nother career.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Working on just a citywide noise ordinance. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I add one point to that, though? Another factor you need to consider in all of this is whether our ordinance even applies to the fairgrounds.
There you go.
There's that whole awesome, yeah.
It applies to
We
all
have
the
dealt
air
with another
right outside of
issue
it, though.
related to that, as you know, so, that we're working on.
Yeah, well,
Well, you need to tell us that. Does it apply?
It's a great place.
That's a good question.
Well, I can make a joke and say it applies right up to the boundaries of the
Yes.
fairgrounds, but once you go into the fairgrounds, it doesn't apply. So how do you keep the noise
Sound.
within those boundaries? No, county is not subject
No,
to
of
our
Right.
Of course
zoning laws, our land use laws, so they can do whatever they want.
They can do whatever, like putting up a sign.
Well, then what have we been going through this week with all that?
Okay.
Wow.
It's important that they want to work with us and they want
Yes.
to cooperate
Do they?
with us, and there's security issues and et cetera that they rely on us for. And so
And it needs to work for our community because we are in a bowl and
Exactly.
sound travels, and so the more we can work cooperatively.
This is
with
that
the better.
cooperation I
Yes,
was talking
exactly. It
about.
benefits our entire community. Right,
Exactly.
exactly.
I have one thing. I was at the PDA meeting last Thursday, and I discovered, or it was announced, that the what did they call it? The Parade of Nations for the Gold Panning Championships are going to be September 13th in the evening, which is a Tuesday, and it's a city council night. So we could either just cancel our city council meeting right now, assuming that it happens, or we can watch the parade go by, because it'll be right out there.
We need to join the parade.
We can recess.
I think
Absolutely recess.
I think we should, yes, but I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention.
Oh.
September
Good catch.
13th.
I didn't even, here
As soon
I'm
as I heard
working
it,
on it,
as
and
soon
I
as I
didn't
heard
even.
it, I turned. I don't know who was with me there, and I turned and went, I think that's, yeah. I was like,
Wow,
yeah, I
good
think-
catch,
yeah,
John.
anyway, okay. Yes, very good.
Okay, city manager, staff report.
The only thing that I wanted to mention, and as much as possible get council consensus on, I'd mentioned in my email last week about the JCI report that we want to do an update at your next city council meeting. And I suggested maybe we do that because I estimate it may take about an hour to do that in some sort of a workshop, more workshop type fashion. Suggested maybe that we might do that prior to the council meeting if that meets with your approval. I think that would be the best way to get that done. So we'd probably schedule it 4 o'clock or 4:30, depending on what we have in terms of closed session. I don't know that yet. So is that all right with everyone? I heard back from a couple of you. I'm assuming that we're okay with doing that. There's there's some information we need, some feedback we need to get, and some discussion we want to show you regarding the solar options that we have, and then also some things related to the water meters that they want to go with. And then there will be, I'm assuming, probably, I've got to work it out for sure, but probably an action item on your agenda following that, that will have you take action. So no action in the workshop setting, but later in the meeting, after you've had that discussion. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, upcoming items. Items tentatively scheduled for the next regularly scheduled city council will include Mallard Street project improvement, Broadway sidewalk engineering contract, facility use agreement with El Dorado High School, 2016-17 mid-year budget review, approve construction management list, approve MOU with Engineer Union Local 39, salary and benefit resolutions for unrepresented employees. And we're adjourned.
Thank you.